Hello there, and welcome to this video revision guide of Mice and Men. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the theme of conflict in the novel. Now, before I go on, it's really important to remember that in your GCSE, you're going to be marked on both what you say about the language which Steinbeck uses, and also the points you make about the context in which the novel was written. So that means the time and place it was written and how it's representative of life in that time and place. Okay, so if I'm thinking about a theme like conflict, the first thing I'm going to do is try and relate it to the context. And if we think about conflict, people falling out, well, it's inevitable that that's going to happen given the pressures that the Great Depression placed on their lives. People haven't got secure jobs, they haven't got enough money, they're uncertain about their future, and this uncertainty is clearly going to drive the conflict in the story. Okay, in this video we're going to look at three major causes of conflict in the novel. These three causes of conflict are: number one, resentment. Second cause of conflict is jealousy, and the third cause of conflict is misunderstanding. And for each of these we're going to talk about both the language, and language points will appear in red, and the context of the novel linked back to the quotation, because these are the points you're going to make in your exam. Okay, starting off then, we're thinking about conflict that's caused by resentment. And we're going to see this right in the beginning of the novel, when George and Lenny are sat talking before they go to the ranch. And in that opening, George becomes increasingly exasperated with Lenny because he starts to tell the reader, essentially, that Lenny is holding him back in life. And what he says, I got you. You can't keep a job, and you lose me every job I get. And this is George to Lenny on page 12 of your edition of the book. And let's have a look at this in a bit of detail. First of all, look at the repetition of that word you. This demonstrates that George sees Lenny as the cause of this conflict. He sees Lenny as the cause of much of their bad luck of recent times, the fact that they don't have a job, the fact that they're on the road. He's blaming Lenny for this, and he repeats the word you to pin that blame on him. Another interesting language point is the abbreviation of that word ever. And this shows, obviously the original word was every, and it's almost as though George is spitting his words out. He's talking quickly, he's being aggressive, and this shows the strength of the anger which George feels at this moment towards Lenny, despite the fact that Lenny's supposed to be his closest friend. And this is where our point of context comes in. He repeats the word job twice. Now remember, in the Great Depression, it was hard for people to find work. It was hard for them to get money. So this repetition of the word job demonstrates how important employment was to them. The fact that Lenny has lost George's job for him is the cause of the conflict. He resents him for this. He feels angry. So, 2 language points, 1 context. It's over to Miss Humphreys.
Thank you, Miss McCary. Okay, the second major form of conflict is jealousy in the novel, and we see how Curly is jealous of Lenny because of the difference in their size. So this quotation is on page 29. He's all the time picking scraps with big guys, kind of like he's mad at him because he ain't a big guy. So that's Slim talking about Curly. And here we see the word mad represents how irrational Curly is and how angry he is about just because he's not a big guy but Lenny is. And then in terms of the context, this shows that his jealousy of Lenny's size represents that America at this time was harsh and unforgiving, and where physical strength was valuable. So obviously Curly's got a bit of small man syndrome, and he gets angry and jealous that Lenny is more powerful, or seems more powerful than him.
Thank you very much, Miss Humphreys. So our final cause of conflict in the novel is misunderstanding. And the misunderstanding we're going to look at in particular detail here is after Lenny has killed Curly's wife. And I think as the reader we feel a certain amount of sympathy for Lenny. George has suggested to Slim that maybe they should go and catch Lenny and try and stop Curly shooting him, maybe bring him in, hand him over to the police. And Slim's reply demonstrates the extent to which Lenny is misunderstood and the extent to which this misunderstanding by Curly drives the conflict. And what we're told by Slim is that if we could keep Curly in, we might, and what he's saying is we might get away with just arresting Lenny, but Curly's going to want to shoot him. It's on page 110 in your books. Now, first of all, let's look at the language. The word gonna he's going to want to shoot him. There's no might in there. This suggests that there is absolutely no doubt that Curly's going to be after a bloody revenge. It suggests that there's no way Lenny's going to be able to get away with this, whatever get-out clause George may try to find for him. And that clearly demonstrates, for whatever reason, Curly's misunderstood Lenny's misunderstood his motivation. Okay, so there's your conflict. Let's look at what we learn about the context of the novel. What we're learning here is that the world of the Great Depression was a hard, uncaring world, and also potentially lawless, in that there's no possibility that the police are going to be involved in this, that Lenny might simply go to prison or face trial. If Curly wants to shoot Lenny, Curly can shoot Lenny. And it's kind of the sense that it's up to people to look after themselves, and if they can't look after themselves, then they're expendable. And this demonstrates what a harsh world the world of the Great Depression was. Okay, so language and context again. What we're going to do now is have a look at a quick example paragraph that you might like to write for your exam. And obviously to do this I'm going to have to step out of shot so you can read it. Here we go.
One of the key causes of conflict in the novel is resentment. Oh, so you forgot that too, did you? Well, I ain't going to remind you. Here in the opening of the novel, George's resentment towards Lenny bubbles over into conflict and anger. His sarcastic use of "oh" seems deeply patronising and unpleasant, given that Lenny is highly unlikely to be able to challenge him. Similarly, Steinbeck voices George with a rhetorical question to emphasise the aggression and animosity which he feels towards his friend as a result of being let down and showed up on a number of occasions. This conflict between friends clearly demonstrates the strain which the pressures of the Great Depression placed on those who lived through it. Here Steinbeck seems to be showing the reader that the conflict is driven as much by the characters' uncertainty as to their futures as it is by George's exasperation with Lenny.
And as you'll see all the way through, we've got two language points here, sarcastic use of the word "oh", and the rhetorical question drawn out in red just to emphasise them to you, and then we finish that paragraph off with an explanation of how this quotation improves our understanding of the context of the novel. So, that's what we're aiming for in the exam. And to recap what we've looked at, we've been thinking about the theme of conflict and of mice and men. We've talked about the way the pressures of the Great Depression lead to a variety of conflicts in the novel. We've looked at three particular causes of conflict, those being resentment, jealousy and misunderstanding, and we've also focused all the way through on the language and the context of the novel, which is going to be so important in your exam. Good luck.